on a cold day. Maybe it
Honestly, depending on the manufacturer.
cost. And 14 SEER would be, let's say, $100.
All right, on to the next one.
So, hey everyone, welcome to episode 2. Today we are going to be discussing what equipment to choose and why, understanding the equipment, the efficiencies, and what you want to choose for your house. Our table here today, we're going to be looking at furnaces, air conditioners, heat pumps. We're going to be looking at the combination systems of furnace and ACs, hybrid systems, which is furnace and heat pumps, along with full electric systems. Which ones do you want to choose for your house? So, on this little chart here, I'm just breaking down furnaces based here in Ottawa. So if we look at our furnaces, it comes in 3 categories. We've got 95%, 96%, and 98%. So how do these work? What does it mean? So 95% efficient furnace typically comes with a what's called constant torque motor and a single stage gas valve. So if we look at that, the operation cost, because it only has one stage of gas and you're only burning the same amount of fuel all the time, that would come at a cost of, let's say, $18 a month. To round it off, 96% efficient furnace, we are jumping into a 2-stage with a variable speed motor. It's a little bit more efficient on electricity as well as gas. Because we have 2 stages, we're going to start in single stage at a lower rate of fire, and then we're going to jump into the full rate if needed, which would be the full rate of fire. If we look at that operation cost, we can cut down to about $16.20 of gas burned a month. Now we jump into the 98% efficient furnaces. 98% efficient furnaces, obviously a little more technical. They are considered modulating furnaces. So they still have the variable speed motor, but they also have what's called a modulating gas valve. The modulating gas valve and the motors actually correspond with each other, and they will work at a variable rate to slowly modulate all the way up to max fire. So if it's a warmer day outside, it may only need to use 50% capacity, and then it can shut down. But on a cold day, maybe it has to use the full capacity. You'd burn more gas, but overall, you'd save a little bit more money, so we'll be looking at about $15.30 a month. So we got some pros and cons with these. So obviously, if we're looking at the 95% efficient furnace, our pros are going to be that it's not as expensive, so the cost is definitely a perk on that one. And it's also simple, very little to break down. It's not as complicated. We look at the 96% efficient. It's going to have more energy savings for pros. It's going to have more home comfort because it has 2 stages. Maybe that lower rate of fire can help get some of the heat around to those parts of the house that stay cooler longer. It is also simple to use. It's, tried and true 2-stage furnaces. Variable speed has been around forever. Now, we look at the 98% efficient. That's maximizing your comfort in your home. That is going to allow the air to equally distribute through your house. Also, it runs more efficiently, and overall, it's a much better product. But again, when we look at the cons, we're going to come into the 95%. We'll jump back. So our cons for that guy, it's going to be higher energy costs. We're going to have less comfort. For our 96%, we're going to have a slight cost increase, which is really the only con. And then the 98% efficient furnace, obviously the biggest con to this one is that the overall install cost is much more. It is also more complicated, so when you get out of the manufacturer warranty, which is typically about 10 or 11 years, the parts and replacements can get more expensive depending on breakdowns. So if we kind of break that down and look at what do these cost and what do I want to choose for my home. So upfront cost, let's say for a 95% efficient furnace, obviously we're going to have anywhere from $40,000 to $115,000. Let's keep it at 60,000 BTUs across the board to make life easy. So if we look at our 95% efficient furnace, we could probably safely say that this, depending on the application, would be anywhere from $4,000 to $4,800 plus tax. So when we look at 96% efficient, our cost, we'd be looking at anywhere from $52 to $58. Depending on the installation and everything that has to go into it, obviously. And if we look at the 98% efficient, we'd probably be looking anywhere from about 72 to 7,800 plus HST. So let's jump into the next segment here. So we're going to talk about air conditioners and heat pumps. What do we want to choose for a house? Do we just want to have AC? Do we want to have a heat pump? One of the biggest questions I'm always asked, if I'm replacing my heat pump, does it replace my furnace? No, my heat pump does not replace my furnace. My heat pump replaces my air conditioner, so my heat pump can heat and it can cool. It can be essentially a secondary source of heat along with your primary source of heat. So my heat pump will heat down to a certain temperature and then it cuts out, and then your backup, whether it's gas or electric, will kick on. on. So that's how a heat pump operates. The way we measure the efficiency on these is we look at the SEER rating, which is the seasonal energy efficiency rating. Just for example here, again, these are all rough numbers, but if I have a 14 SEER, an 18 SEER, and a 22 SEER, just to kind of break down the cost. If we look at operation costs, let's say my 14 SEER is $100 a month in operations. It's safe to say that my 18 SEER is going to be about 22% more efficient than that. So we'll drop that down to $78 a month. And then if we jump up to 22 SEER, we're 36% more efficient than the 14 SEER. So we're looking at about a $64 on average monthly cost. Again, these are just rough numbers, nothing to base these on, just an idea of how the seasonal energy efficiency rating works. So what are the pros and cons to some of these systems? So if we look at the 14 SEER, it's simple and it's cost effective. It's probably going to be the cheapest of the bunch. It's simple to use. It's a standard air conditioner. We jump into the 18 SEER. It's more energy efficient. When you jump into 18 SEER systems, whether it be for heat pumps or for AC, you're typically going to have either two-stage or a modulating compressor, which is going to create more efficiency and less energy costs, create more comfort in your home, and they also have quiet operation. The 22 SEER, it is obviously the most efficient. It's going to create maximum comfort in your home, and it is typically super quiet. So when you're in your backyard and your air conditioner is there, hopefully you hardly hear it. Cons to these products, the 14 SEER, obviously it's less efficient, costs me more money. When we jump into the 18 and the 22 SEER, really the cons are the price. It costs more money to install. Let's look at a little cost breakdown here to see what we can expect to see on these units. So 14 SEER, maybe we base that on 2 ton is a pretty common system. So a 2-ton system, let's say 14 SEER. Again, this is all dependent on application and install. Let's say we're anywhere from 3,800 to 4,600 plus HST. On 18 SEER, we'd probably be looking at a considerable amount more. You'd probably be jumping anywhere from 5,800 to 9,000, honestly, depending on the manufacturer. And then when we get into the 22 SEER models, you're going to have a considerable leap there. You're going to be anywhere from about 8,000 to 14,000. And again, that's all dependent on the manufacturer and obviously the company you choose to have these installed by. But these are some rough numbers that you can probably expect to see out there. All right, on to the next one. So on this little chart here, as it's becoming more popular in Ottawa, it's becoming more popular throughout Ontario, obviously, and they're becoming more recognized. I did a little comparison here. Should I choose a furnace or an air conditioner? Should I go hybrid, so a furnace and a heat pump? Or should I go full electric? What are the pros? What are the cons? What are we looking at here? So, furnace and air conditioner is the most simple, the most basic, and the easiest thing to have done. Simple to use, it's cost effective. Obviously, it's not as energy efficient. Also, all it depends on your home. If we look at the hybrid systems, the pros to these, obviously, for the efficiency you're going to get out of it, they are well priced depending on the system you get. It is more energy efficient and it's eco-friendly. So, you know, we're trying to be more carbon neutral. So people are trying to get rid of their furnaces. But if you don't want to completely get rid of your natural gas, it's a great way to supplement more electricity into your home than just only using fossil fuels. The cons to this unit here, honestly, it's usually adapting to comfort in your house. People aren't used to the heat pump. When we go from furnace to heat pump, it doesn't give off as much heat as what my gas furnace did. So I don't feel that instant comfort when my furnace kicks in. So sometimes it takes a little bit of getting used to because it's a little more evenly distributed on heat. It's a little less heat, so it doesn't feel like it gets as warm as quick. There's also adapting to some thermostat changes on how you set your thermostat back and how you turn it back up. It can have negative effects on the heat pump. It takes a little while to learn the system, but once you understand it, I personally love it. I think it's a great system to have. If we look at the full electric system, obviously it's the most eco-friendly, energy efficient. So it's using 100% of the energy inside the system at full electric. Two of the bigger cons are obviously operation costs. Here in Ottawa, we get really, really cold weather. So depending on the system that you have installed, if it's not a cold climate system and it can't maintain temperature down to below -26 or -30, you're going to be using electric backup a lot, which can drive your hydro bill up, up, up. That is one of the negative effects. Obviously, having a more efficient home might be a smarter thing to do here. The upfront cost is typically higher, and it's not that the equipment upfront cost is higher, but a lot of houses only have 100 amp panels. Having to switch out from gas to full electric, you're looking at a panel upgrade as well, so you're gonna have initial costs not only to your HVAC system, but to other parts of your house. And then there's also learning the system. By me setting it back, am I going to turn on my electric backup? Am I going to not turn on my electric backup? Understanding how the system works and learning your thermostat is super crucial to making these systems efficient and keeping the most comfort in your home. So understanding your thermostat is obviously the most important to making these systems the most efficient. So let's jump into the cost. What are we looking at here? So obviously furnace AC is going to be one of your cheaper ones. So depending on your house and depending on when you go into the installation, you could probably expect anywhere from 8 to 14. Hybrid system, you'd probably be expecting anywhere from about 10.5 to 16.5, again, depending on the system and the amount of work that has to go into it. Full electric, for the HVAC itself, you could probably expect to see anywhere from, again, 11.5 to 17, depending on the system. And then you also have to factor in your electrical, which could be anywhere from, say, 35 to 65, depending on the company and what needs to be done. Thank you so much for watching episode 2. Please like, subscribe, and share. That would be great. Thank you so much.